Good morning, people. I'm Suzanne McAllister with the Paw Project and Vegan Spirituality Group of Philadelphia, and I am here today with the co-founder of the Paw Project, Ann Piotrowski, who is also the founder of something called Conversations with a Friendly Vegan, and she and I have worked closely together for a decade or more. And we are back, or I'm back, and Anne is meeting Mary Ryan, who I interviewed last month as our featured visionary. And that was more in the context of Mary's involvement with an organization called Forgotten Cats, which we went into great detail about what Forgotten Cats does in that interview. So you can check back on YouTube and take a look at that if you're interested. They do great work. During that conversation, I found out that Mary was a retired teacher and had been very involved with all kinds of things. She was awarded the PETA Teacher of the Year at one point. But what we're going to focus on today is some of the things that I suspect were more extracurricular. Do I have that right, Mary, with your
Yes.
KIND program?
Yes.
So I'm interested in hearing about that, what that was about, and any of the what's the word I'm looking for? Obstacles that you might have encountered as you were working in that realm. And I specifically wanted Anne to be here because I don't have children, so I wasn't putting anybody through the education system. And so Anne has a point of view that I just don't have in my experience. So, Mary, why don't you tell us about KIND or however you want to start?
Okay. All right. Uh, well, I had always, from the time I was, I think, a late teenager, been interested in humane education. And humane education came about from uh, really stemming back to the late 1800s in Victorian England, the idea of engendering compassion and empathy and kindness towards animals, partly as a way of producing citizens who would be kind and empathetic towards their fellow citizens. It had that kind of emphasis. Um, I later on became a philosophy major in school, in college, and I learned in philosophy about the animal rights and environmental education, and I went down that path. Um, I later joined the Army, and in the Army, I was also involved with humane education in Germany and in helping soldiers with pets and issues of transporting pets back to the United States and so on. When I returned to the United States, I entered a master's program in philosophy for children at Montclair State University. And the emphasis on that was introducing philosophy and critical thinking to children, not so much in terms of teaching about philosophy, but in having students actually engage in philosophical inquiry. And the vehicle for that was uh, were novels that were written by Matthew Lipman. The Philosophy for Children program still exists, but children were the protagonist in these novels, and they would engage in philosophical inquiry. Each novel had a specific subdiscipline. It might have been ethics or social inquiry or theory of mind. One in particular was called Keo and Gus, and the students, the children were engaged in inquiring about the natural world and do animals have feelings and can animals think? So all of that, it was really instrumental and brought children in many ways to question their own beliefs and practices and assumptions about animals and each other. So that was sort of the framework that I had, when I started teaching, and I was hired to teach the philosophy program in the school district for gifted and talented, which I did for some time. I later became a classroom teacher, fifth grade teacher, and I found that, of course, all children love animals, and I came back to the humane education first I did a lot of environmental education. I did the GLOBE program, which was focused on really a lot of environmental monitoring and testing. And we did a lot of weekend work, monitoring streams and so on. But I got back into the animals with the KIND Club. So KIND was something that stood for Kids in Nature's Defense. And I think I got the acronym from the Humane Society of the United States, which at that time published a little newspaper called Kind News. And they had two versions, one's for first through third grade, and then an upper level 4 through 6. So I started this Kind Club as an after-school program that met. I had two groups, the younger group and the older groups, and we would use the little newspaper. I did a lot with children's literature, reading things like about, dancing bears in India or community cats and things like that. Each session would have a theme. So we started with responsible pet ownership and what does it mean to take care of an animal and what are their feelings and how are they like us and how are they different from us. And the emphasis was always on taking a perspective and broadening our empathy. If I just say one more thing and then I'll stop and let someone else jump in. We had a pledge, and so the pledge was I pledge to be kind to all living creatures and to speak out in their defense. And that specific little pledge, which we recited at every meeting, and the kids loved it. And they signed it, and they decorated it. And that specific pledge brought about a lot of thinking on their part. I pledge to stand up in their defense. And so at our meetings, they would say things like, well, there are children stepping on ants in the playground, and what do I do? And, someone is teasing my cat at home, or things like that. And I found that it became a forum for children who had this kind of sensitivity towards animals. And, they really needed a place where they could feel, a part of things and not different.
Wow.
And I can get into a little bit more of the vegan things too, in a little bit, if anybody would like to jump in.
I'm just going to jump in with what I'm feeling as you're talking. And then I think Anne can probably ask more questions. But my first thought was, how much fun was that for you to be doing that? And I thought I would have loved to be in that position. And then the other thing was, what a terrific service you were giving them, that they had a place to come and talk about what they were seeing. And my guess is that you did some problem solving with them. Like, what do I do at home if my older brother is tormenting the cat?
Mm-hmm.
He's the older brother. I don't have a whole lot of influence there, but how do we address that? So
Right.
very interesting. Very interesting. So that was just my immediate reaction as I was listening to you. And also I'm fascinated with, I don't think I knew you were in the Army and what you did there. So anyway, jump in, Anne.
Yeah, I was thinking when you said the Army part, I was thinking thank you for your service, but to the Army, yes, you're part of the Army, but also thank you for your service to the animals for all you've done. Yeah, just as you were talking, I was thinking about when my daughter's 19 now, but as I mentioned before, we started recording, that I was very involved in the school as Gracie was vegetarian and then went vegan, and then just working within the context of a public school to advocate for her differences in the way she was going to receive education in certain things, certain lessons, and also supporting her in terms of if she was feeling different than everybody in the cafeteria, just having lunch, or what she was bringing in for lunch, and so on. And I was just wishing that there had been a program like that, or somebody like you at that time. That would have been such a enhancement of her educational experience, to have that validation, to have that reflected back to her, that what she's thinking and feeling and doing, and what we're trying to do as a family, that it's okay, that it's good. That's not so strange and weird to care about
And that's
animals.
the key word, the validation, because sometimes you can't solve all of those problems, but for the children to know that they are not alone. There are others who feel that way, and you're not weird because
Right.
everybody in society eats meat or whatever. And
What,
so yes, some
yeah,
problem solving, some role play and things like that. And I found too that students would uh, they developed a bond with one another, and that was really a good place for them.
yeah. I'm curious, Mary, what was the school administration's involvement, or how did they like the kind program, supported it, etc.?
Absolutely. Because children need a place to go after school. And a lot of the children who came to my program weren't involved in sports. Maybe their families couldn't afford to send them to, to aftercare or some other clubs. And so it was a place that everyone was welcome.
Mhm.
And the administration was very, very supportive of the program. And I would generally submit a kind of agenda about the sort of things the topics that we would cover. And they would include things like, as I said, pet ownership. Sometimes it would be like laws protecting animals. So we did get into that. Um, uh, we wrote letters to legislators. So I was teaching about civic responsibility, and they would love when you almost always will get a response back if you write to your congressman about something. So I taught them how we do that and how laws are made. Taught about overpopulation, of course, spaying and neutering. We did field trips to the animal shelters, to different places. Sometimes had speakers. I would try to have snacks, and so everybody needs a snack. So I would have vegan snacks sometimes. Like I would say, these are vegan brownies, and here's the recipe that you can take home.
Neat.
And if it were Thanksgiving, I would try to highlight like animals in their natural habitat. Like this is what chickens are really like and why they need a dust bath. And this is how pigs take care of their piglets. And this is what, or elephants that are not in zoos, they travel, 500 miles a day and that kind of thing. So a lot was like help without really being too explicit with children, but like helping them to connect the dots and keeping it positive. But so this is what animals are really like. And this is the kind of needs that they have. And so if we aren't attending to we're not being respectful to them as individuals and as their needs, then that's not right. I did do like wild turkeys, and would give them recipes for like an animal friendly Thanksgiving and things like that. I don't know if I mentioned about the tofurkey, so I wrote to the tofurkey company. We did get a little bit more into farm animals and vegetarians. We did Meatless Mondays. So when the Meatless Monday campaign, they had so much for school. So I was never able to get really any traction with the school district about Meatless Monday, but we did try. And I gave the information to the students. But the tofurkey company was great. They sent me a lot of coupons for free tofurkey, which I was able to purchase a lot and bring into the students to sample. And we had a spring fair where we all cooked it together and we gave it to other people. So that was kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. A few things that you said have stood out to me. One is how the kids bonded with each other, because in my experience, like the if there's a challenge to becoming vegan, it's not so much like what to eat, because that's there's a little learning curve and then it's pretty easy. It's that wanting to feel, even as an adult, not just kids, but wanting to feel a sense of community with others, especially around food, because that's how we commune. We get together a lot of times around food. So to feel that bond is such a lovely thing, an important thing. And I love the pledge, and I tried to write it down, but can you repeat that?
And
Mhm.
yeah, I was also going to ask you if you have any photographs of the decorated pledge, because I would love to post that with this interview, if you
Okay,
have it.
I will find something. Mhm.
Okay, and then you'll have the words, Anne, because I was also struck by that.
Yeah.
I,
Okay.
I'm I have a question, which is when you step back now, because I think you've been retired for a little while, right?
Yes,
2 years.
yes,
Yeah.
3 years now.
So when you step back, do you have like a main takeaway from having introduced the KIND program and what that was like for you?
Well, it really was so important. And in fact, I want to do it all again. I'm still very much interested in humane education. I mean, there are so many materials. There's a plethora of materials and activities and things that so many groups have published. Um, the problem is getting things into the schools because the curriculum is so packed. Even though Pennsylvania is among many states which have a humane education component. If you look at the standards, we are supposed to teach about kindness and respect to animals. So it's there. And I brought that up to my administration a couple of times just in order to provide some foundation for what we're doing. Um, uh, just to step back a little bit, in the last few years that I was teaching, I became an ESL teacher.
Mhm.
So I did some of these activities with my ESL students. I also became certified in a really neat program called the Red Rover Readers. And they have it's not really a curriculum, but there is a list of children's trade books, of literature books, which are wonderful, and discussion guides, and it kind of goes through a pedagogy of how to do this kind of education with children through children's literature.
Mhm.
And I remember discussions such as, well, what do you say in the classroom if a student says, oh, well, um, my friend down the street, bullies the dogs or whatever, and how to actually handle that. It's like, well, what do the rest of you think? Do you think that's okay? And maybe we're going to talk to the school counselor afterwards or something. But that program was also very beneficial. And I think perhaps doing something like that through the children's library, having discussion groups that could be animal themed groups. It would be another way to do that. But yeah, I think it's just so important, especially in today's time, where that children are getting models of kindness and compassion and empathy
Yeah.
that really begins from the time we are young.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how the way you just described it, where maybe we're going to talk to the school counselor, or maybe read the librarian will read some books, or so it really makes it more of an integrated team approach versus just you one person having one program
Yeah.
and doing that. It's just a great idea to have it more integrated throughout the day of a student's day. And when I think about from the parent perspective, um, I remember doing things like there's a lending library that you can order alternative methods of instruction. So when my daughter's class had the eggs that hatched and then they had the chicks in a classroom. Now, of course, she's in the classroom with chicks. She's not going to not ooh and ah over them. However, we got this alternative kit that showed it was very tactile and it showed all the different stages of development and, but did not involve, live animals.
Wonderful.
And we ordered that and brought it into the classroom. It was not off limits to all the kids in the classroom. She brought it in, but then everybody could see
Yeah.
that, and
And it
then
was a real alternative, Anne, it seemed.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the teacher had not seen this or did not know that this was something that was
Right.
available. So I think even just that exposure on different levels for me and Gracie, bringing that into the teacher and then and then bringing it into the classroom and having it be there. Just because I think sometimes uh, there's not the critical thinking because it's just we're doing what we're doing. We're doing what we've always done. We're doing what's been done for how many years, and just to even know that there are alternatives.
Yeah.
The same for when she got older and was in high school, and there was dissection.
Yeah, I need to hop in because we're just about out of time, which I'm really interested
We could
though.
talk a lot longer, I know, but we could keep going. But
Yeah,
yes,
I don't know whether you want to say a little bit more about the dissection, and then I want to hear, Mary, if there are any last words you want to share, in addition to what you've already mentioned. But do you want to say more about the dissection, Anne?
no, just that I wouldn't have known either years ago that there was an alternative way to learn the same lessons. I just because I hadn't thought of it. But yeah, just being
Yeah.
able to bring
And,
that
and,
as an alternative. Yeah.
and I want to tie that in as well, Anne. I'm so glad you brought that up because many of my students were interested in science because I had done a lot of science with them. I knew they were going to gravitate towards science in middle and high school. So I made them aware of that law, which you obviously had known about, passed in 1992 in Pennsylvania, that students do not have to participate in dissections or incubations or things of that nature and have to be provided with alternatives and without being discriminated against. So that's wonderful. And as you say, that peer support is just so important.
Wow. So I'm going to end by saying I find myself energized and inspired, and I'm thinking, all right, how are we going to do something with children? And maybe you're going to take the lead, Mary.
That sounds wonderful.
And
I could use a team approach.
well, Anne and I made a decision years ago. We don't want to be doing stuff on our own. And that's why we do things together. And it really makes a difference. I guess there are some people who are okay working solo. I like to have a partner. So I'm inspired. I think to be continued. Maybe the three of us talk offline about what might be next.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
schools are interested in programs that, like
Yeah.
you said, kids need to do something after school. So,
Yeah. But
yeah.
thank you so much, Mary, for your time,
Thank you,
for
Mary.
everything you've done, and thank you for your insights and experience. So we'll be posting this and looking forward to continued contact.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure.
All
Thank you,
right,
Mary.
take
Thank you,
care.
Suzanne.
Bye.